So I was at my job one day wondering what I was going to do for my next review when a thought occurred to me. I've tackled some of the games that I've known from recent memory, but what about some of the games from my childhood? As I thought about a few games that I played back in the day, one person really stood out. Or 8, I should say. And when that aha moment clicked the ever-dimming light bulb on in my brain, I decided to go back to Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo. Then I burnt myself on a soldering iron set to 700 degrees and stabbed myself on the fine tip pin I was working on, but that's not the point. Growing up in an impoverished family of 4 children didn't really leave a whole lot of time to mess around playing video games, so whenever we did get a console, it was usually the previous generation console that was sold used in a pawn shop, by people that looked less like businessmen and more like the type of people that started an episode of Cops. Even then, we always made do with what we had, and we enjoyed every freaking second of it. By the time my family owned a Super Nintendo, the N64 was already out for around 3 years. Yeah, we lived in the past, but the past also had the original 3 Donkey Kong Country games, so it kicked all sorts of ass. So if you guys think I'm going to be content with just reviewing one of the games from the OG DKC games, then you got another thing coming. That means that I'm going to be taking a look at all 3 Donkey Kong Country games on the Super Nintendo over the next few weeks. And now it's time to start off with the Banana Slammo with Donkey Kong Country 1. If you're a younger viewer watching this review today, first off I need to ask what the hell is wrong with your parents for letting you watch a guy in his early 20s scream profanity into a microphone and call it a review, but also you may not be familiar with the history of Donkey Kong, so let's take a look. The original Donkey Kong was a platforming arcade game released in 1981. You played as Mario, then named Jumpman, to save his girlfriend from Donkey Kong as he tossed barrels at you from the top of the level. It was a pretty simple game, but like any of the old school games, particularly arcades, they can be more brutal than a bully using a power drill to give you a titty twister. Then in 1982, the sequel called Donkey Kong Jr. was released, where roles were reversed and you played as Donkey Kong's son trying to save his father from Mario. Then in 1994, the company Rare came around and developed Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo. And somewhere down the line, I swear to God that Nintendo decided to turn Donkey Kong into the gaming equivalent of Nicolas Cage. Seriously, though the big DK looks pretty restrained as a character, he's done some weird ass shit. First he knocks his elders down from treetops, like a dick, then some idiot thought it would be a good idea to give this nutcase a coconut firing gun, like a dick. Then he started doing ass shots during a violent race where he also threw giant bananas, like a dick. Then he rolled around on a ball and made his elders bounce on him like a circus act, like a dick. And then Sakurai threw him into a fighting tournament and gave him a funny as hell taunt so he could taunt at people he kills, like a dick. Since then, Donkey Kong decided to retire from his dickishness and become an incredibly confusing meme, involving dicks. Dick jokes aside, Donkey Kong Country's story is as by the books as a game can get. Then again, this was the Super Nintendo, so back then there was much more of an emphasis on gameplay rather than actual stories. So what's the story here? Well, a giant croc named King K. Rool and his army of Kremlings have invaded Donkey Kong Island and stolen all of DK's bananas. Like a dick! Okay, just let me have that last one. Anyway, it's now up to DK and his buddy Diddy to hunt down the bananas and kick some Kremling ass. And that's it. What, were you expecting a novel? You could play this game on your own or with a friend using one of 3 game modes, but for tradition's sake, we'll be taking a look at the single player mode. You could play as either Donkey Kong or Diddy, with DK being the stronger of the two, and Diddy being the faster one. To put it simply, even though that this is a Donkey Kong game, DK from right out the gate gets overshadowed by Diddy because he's not just faster, he can also take on most of the same enemies that Donkey can with only a few exceptions. Combined with his smaller size, Diddy is immediately the superior of the two. It's no wonder why there's a speedrunning slogan in DKC1 that reads,
"If you're Donkey, you're dead."
You can switch between the 2 Kongs at any time, but it should only be reserved if you're switching to Diddy, or to switch to Donkey so you can get hurt by an enemy, and that way you can immediately go back to Diddy. Basically, our Kongs can't take much abuse, so lose both Kongs and you lose a life. If you lose a Kong, just find and break a DK barrel to get that Kong back. And as for lives, this game provides plenty, and you may just need all of them still, because this game can get pretty hard at times. Disregarding the last 3 worlds, which can royally kiss my ass by the way, there are some levels that can be stupidly hard for reasons that are so small, like Minecart Carnage in World 2. This level starts as a pretty simple platformer, but then starts throwing in fallen minecarts and enemies flying towards you in their own minecarts. I wouldn't mind so much if the timing to jump wasn't super fucking precise sometimes. God damn. any more further back and these monkeys are gonna need parachutes instead of a freaking minecart. Maybe the next level will be more lenient.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
Along the way you can find various animal buddies that will help you traverse through the levels. Most can kill enemies with ease and serve as an extra hit point, so hold on to them as long as you can. Not only that, but each level holds golden animal tokens that, once you collect 3 of the same animal, takes you to a bonus level where you can earn more lives for every 100 tokens you collect. Just make sure you grab the halfway barrel before doing so, otherwise you'll be teleported back to the beginning of the frickin' stage.
God f***ing damn it!
Now let's go back to those last 3 worlds that can kiss my ass. These tend to be the more gimmicky levels of the game, especially worlds 4 and 6. It's either that you're dealing with the obnoxious ice physics and the 360-degree cannon barrels in World 4, or doing some bullshit platforming in World 6 where you need to keep and accurately throw a barrel at an otherwise unkillable enemy on a very small platform. If there's anything that's going to take away a bunch of lives, it's these 2 worlds. Another thing worth noting is that most levels have hidden areas that you must find in order to reach what this game considers as 100%. Seriously, what's up with the 101%? I just don't get that. Naturally, at the end of each world there is a boss fight, and they are piss easy. These bosses are so easy that a couple are actually reused with different color and a slight tweak. Oh no, the beaver's doing high jumps! Shit's getting real here! The first thing that gets noticed in Donkey Kong Country is definitely the art style, and I rather enjoy the enemies, in both design as well as the sounds they make when they're defeated. Not to mention that the more bubbly-eyed bastards always bring a slight laugh or two whenever I encounter them, or when I have encounter with enemies like these. Purgatory. It's a bitch. The 3D pre-rendered art style is quite nice to look at, but it tends to lead to some issues. There are some levels where the developers went a little overboard on the environment, such as the foreground. I like how adding scenery to a foreground gives the game a sense of depth, but not so much where it starts obstructing my view while playing. It's more apparent in the cave and snow levels, so it's not totally rage-inducing, but jimmies have been professionally rustled. The music is also phenomenal here, with David Wise composing the majority of it. Each song matches the mood quite perfectly, with my favorites being the more atmospheric pieces that play during the underwater and snow levels. I don't think it's any secret that I recommend Donkey Kong Country to just about anyone. Yeah, it has its flaws, but each death, bullshit or otherwise, only makes me want to try harder to succeed. It's simplistic, fun, and a great game to try out whenever you're looking for some old school Donkey Kong. It's worth mentioning that unless you have a Super Nintendo and or money to shell out for one, you're better off getting this game on the Wii U Virtual Console. So that's gonna do it for this review. Up next we're looking at Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. This has been Ragnella, wishing you to have fun. Watch where you're expanding those dongs. Jesus Christ, you almost poked my eye out. Take care, people.